At 7:22 in the morning on November 15th, 1943, Private First Class Samuel Keller crouched in a bullet-riddled foxhole on Bougainville Island with a shrapnel wound seeping blood through the bandage on his left shoulder. 400 yards ahead, a Japanese sniper controlled the ridge from a position nobody could see and nobody could reach. The sniper had killed 11 Marines in the previous 72 hours. Systematic, surgical, patient. Private Sullivan was dying 30 yards out in the open, screaming. His voice cut through the jungle like a saw blade. Nobody could reach him without drawing fire from the invisible marksman who owned every inch of open ground between the American foxholes and the tree line. Two companies were pinned down. The advance had stopped. Men were refusing to move during daylight because movement meant death, and death came from a position 400 yards away that standard Marine Corps weapons couldn't engage. Sergeant Dutch Holloway appeared at the edge of Keller's foxhole. His face was drawn tight with 3 days of no sleep and too many body bags. He looked at the modified M1 carbine lying across Keller's lap, and his eyes went cold. That barrel's been cut. It wasn't a question. Yes, Sergeant. The barrel was 3 inches shorter than regulation. The stock had been reshaped with a rasp and sandpaper. The sights had been filed down and re-zeroed using nothing but instinct and muscle memory from a Pennsylvania gunsmith shop. Every modification violated Marine Corps regulations. Every modification was a court-martial offense. Destruction of government property in a combat zone carried a maximum penalty of 5 years hard labor. In extreme cases of firing squad, you'll be court-martialed. Yes, Sergeant. Holloway looked at Sullivan, still screaming, still dying, still unreachable. He looked back at the modified weapon. He looked at Keller. The calculation took 5 seconds. Then you better make it count, because if you miss, I'm putting you in the brig myself. Keller moved to the edge of his foxhole where he had a narrow angle toward the ridge. The tree line was a solid wall of green with no obvious target. But Keller had watched Japanese snipers work for 2 weeks straight. He understood their patterns. They shot from positions that offered concealment in multiple exit routes. They preferred locations 10 to 15 feet above ground level where they could see over lower vegetation, and they didn't move immediately after shooting. They waited 3 to 5 minutes watching to see if Americans would return fire at the wrong location. Sullivan had been shot 6 minutes ago. The sniper was still there. Keller identified 3 likely positions based on elevation and sight lines. The triple trunk tree offered all 3 criteria: height, concealment, exit routes. He focused on a shadowed area 12 feet up where 3 massive trunks merged into a single canopy. No visible target, just geometry and instinct. 400 yards. Wind from the left maybe 5 miles per hour. The .30 caliber carbine cartridge would drift 8 to 10 inches at that range. Standard M1 carbine effective range was listed at 300 yards, and that was optimistic. Beyond 200 yards, the round lost velocity rapidly, and wind drift became unpredictable. This shot was officially impossible. Keller settled the shortened stock against his shoulder. The fit was perfect. Modified for his build, his shooting style, his need to bring the weapon up and fire in under 2 seconds. The front sight post aligned just below where he estimated the target to be, compensating for the trajectory drop he'd calculated mentally. Hold left edge of the shadow. Compensate for wind. Don't think, feel. Uncle Frank's voice from 8 years ago in a converted garage in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. You see how things should work, not how you're told they work. Exhale halfway, heart rate slows, left hand steady on the forestock. Wind compensation 12 inches left. Trigger pressure building. 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds. Crack. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. The report was sharp and flat, different from a regulation carbine. The shortened barrel created a distinct sound that carried across the jungle like a whip crack. Keller worked the action immediately, chambering a second round, but he didn't fire. He watched the shadow. 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Something dark tumbled from the tree. Heavy, too heavy to be a branch. It hit the ground with an impact audible even at 400 yards. The shape didn't move. Holloway had binoculars up. He glassed the target for 10 seconds. Confirmed kill Keller. He's wearing a harness. Looks like he was tied to the trunk. Word spread through the platoon in under a minute. Keller had just killed a sniper at a range that wasn't supposed to be possible with an M1 carbine. More importantly, he'd killed a sniper that nobody else could locate or engage. Sullivan's screaming had stopped. The corpsman reached him 40 seconds later. Too late. But the sniper who'd killed him was dead too, and that changed everything. That shot saved 300 lives over the next 48 hours. It also violated every regulation in the Marine Corps manual and set in motion a chain of events that would nearly end in a firing squad. To understand why Samuel Keller risked everything that morning, we need to go back. Back to a coal town in Pennsylvania where a 12-year-old boy learned that military specifications weren't designed for maximum effectiveness. They were designed for mass production. And sometimes the distance between what works and what's authorized is measured in 3 inches of barrel and the willingness to use a hacksaw after midnight. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, anthracite coal country. Population 86,000, but Sam's neighborhood was maybe 800 people clustered around the coal breakers that lined the Susquehanna River, like industrial tombstones. The Depression had hit hard. His father, James Keller, worked the breakers for $2.40 a day. 12-hour shifts breathing coal dust that would eventually kill him at age 53. Uncle Frank ran a gunsmith shop out of a converted garage on South Main Street. The shop specialized in fixing hunting rifles for miners who couldn't afford factory repairs. Most gunsmiths in town charged $8 for work that miners didn't have. Frank charged whatever they could pay, which was often nothing. Sam started working there at age 12 in the summer of 1932. His first real job was watching Uncle Frank fix a Winchester Model 94 with an action jam so solid that 2 other gunsmiths had refused the work. "Don't force it," Frank said, working a thin file into the action with patience that seemed almost religious. "Listen to the metal. It'll tell you what's wrong." 30 minutes later, the action was free, smoother than when it left the factory. Frank handed the rifle back to the miner and refused payment. "You feed your family with this. No charge." After the man left, Frank turned to Sam. "That's lesson 1. You see how things should work, not how you're told they work. Factory builds to a spec. Spec is designed for production speed and cost, not for the man pulling the trigger." "You understand?" Sam nodded. He didn't fully understand then, but he would. By age 14, Sam was doing simple repairs on his own. A beat-up Remington Model 14 came in and the owner complained it couldn't hit a barn door at 50 yards. The rifle had cost $12 used and wasn't worth professional repair. Frank let Sam work on it. Sam shortened the barrel 2 inches, lightened the trigger pull, reshaped the stock to better fit the shooter's build. When the owner came back to pick it up, he fired it at the range behind the shop and put 5 rounds into a group the size of a silver dollar. "What did you do to it? Made it work right?" The owner paid $3. Frank let Sam keep 2. That night, Frank explained the real lesson. Military specs are for mass production, making 10,000 rifles that all work adequately. But adequate isn't the same as good. And when your life depends on it, adequate can get you killed. You just made a $12 rifle shoot like a $60 rifle by ignoring what it was supposed to be and making it what it needed to be. Remember that. Sam remembered. By age 16, he had a reputation. Miners brought him weapons that other gunsmiths had rejected. Rifles too old, too damaged, too cheap to be worth fixing. Sam would shorten barrels, reshape stocks, adjust triggers, and hand them back shooting tighter groups than when they left the factory. The modifications were ugly. They violated every gunsmithing textbook. But they worked. Results matter more than rules. That was the philosophy forming in Sam's mind. A philosophy that would save hundreds of lives and nearly get him executed. December 7th, 1941. Sam was 21 years old working at Uncle Frank's shop when the radio announced Pearl Harbor. He enlisted 9 months later in September of 1942 after waiting long enough for Frank to find a replacement worker. Boot camp at Camp Lejeune felt wrong from the first day. The M1 carbine they issued him was a compromise weapon, designed for rear echelon troops who needed something more effective than a pistol, but lighter than a full rifle. The stock was too long for quick shouldering. The sights were too high for instinctive shooting. The barrel was muzzle-heavy and rapid fire. Sam kept his mouth shut. Privates didn't critique ordnance decisions made by officers in Washington who'd never worked a day in a gunsmith shop. But on the rifle range, something became clear. Sam could shoot, not just adequately, exceptionally. His qualifying score was 238 out of 250 possible, expert category. But it wasn't the score that caught attention. It was his speed. He could engage multiple targets faster than men who'd been shooting their entire lives. Drill instructor Cruz pulled him aside after qualifications. "How do you shoot that fast?" "Keller, I don't aim, sir. I point. Like a shotgun. The rifle's an extension of my hands, not a precision instrument. That's not how we teach it." "Yes, sir. But it works." Cruz made a note in Sam's file. "Natural rifleman, unorthodox method." Then he moved on to the next Marine. Sam graduated boot camp in November of 1942 and shipped out to the Solomon Islands in July of 1943 with the 3rd Marine Division. Everything Sam had learned in that Pennsylvania garage was about to be tested, and one lesson would prove more valuable than all the others combined. Sometimes the weapon you're issued isn't the weapon you need, and if you have the skill and the courage, you can close that gap yourself, even if it means risking everything. But first, Sam needed a reason to take that risk, a reason powerful enough to justify facing a firing squad. That reason came on November 4th, 1943, in the form of a man named James Whitaker. Corporal James Whitaker was from Tennessee, 24 years old. Sam had shared a transport ship with him for 6 weeks during the voyage from Hawaii to the Solomons. They'd played gin rummy almost every night. Whitaker always lost, always laughed about it. "Keller, you're cleaning me out. Good thing we're playing for cigarettes and not money." Whitaker's dream was to open a garage in Knoxville after the war. He talked about it constantly. 2 bays, one for repairs, one for custom work. He knew Sam had worked in his uncle's shop. "You know, engines right, we'd make a hell of a team. I do the mechanical, you do the custom work. Keller and Whitaker's garage has a nice ring to it." Sam would usually just nod and deal another hand, but the truth was he liked the idea, liked Whitaker. The man had an optimism that felt rare in the Marine Corps, especially after they landed on Bougainville. Whitaker had a wife named Sarah, high school sweetheart, 2 daughters. Annie was 6, Rose was 4. He kept their photo in his helmet, and every time mail call came, there was a new picture. The girls were growing fast. Every photo showed changes: lost teeth, new dresses, Rose learning to read, Annie starting 1st grade. On November 1st, the day they landed on Bougainville, Whitaker got his latest photo. He showed it to everyone in the squad. "Look how big they're getting. Annie lost her 1st tooth. Rose is starting to read actual books now, not just picture books." Sam looked at the photo. 2 little girls in matching dresses, smiling at the camera, holding hands. 17 days until rotation, Sam said. "You'll see them for Christmas." Whitaker grinned and 17 days, then it's Tennessee whiskey and bear hugs. 3 days later, Whitaker was dead. November 4th, 1943, 11:30 in the morning. The mission was supposed to be routine. Secure a ridgeline, establish an observation post. Intelligence had reported light enemy presence. Sam and Whitaker were walking point and slack positions. Whitaker 15 yards ahead, Sam covering from behind. The ridge was quiet, too quiet. Sam felt it before he understood it. That absence of sound that means something is waiting. Whitaker paused. Hand signal, possible contact ahead. He raised his rifle to his shoulder. Click. The rifle jammed. The action locked solid. Whitaker worked the bolt trying to clear it. Standard M1 carbine issue. The weapon was notorious for jamming in humid jungle conditions. Dust moisture, poor maintenance. It didn't matter why. What mattered was that Whitaker was 15 yards ahead of Sam with a weapon that wouldn't fire. Whitaker looked back. His face showed confusion, then understanding, then fear. Sam started moving forward. Crack, Japanese Type 99 Arisaka, 7.7 millimeter. The round hit Whitaker's left thigh, and arterial blood sprayed in a pattern that Sam would see in his nightmares for the next 50 years. Whitaker dropped. Screaming, Sam ran, 15 yards, 10 yards. Another shot cracked past kicking up dirt 2 feet to his left. The sniper was ranging adjusting, 5 yards. Sam slid the last few feet and grabbed Whitaker by his combat webbing, dragging him behind a fallen log. Blood was pumping through Sam's fingers. Too much blood, too much pressure. The femoral artery was severed. Sam pressed down with both hands, but the blood kept coming hot and thick, soaking through Sam's fingers, his palms, his forearms. "Corpsman," Sam yelled. "Corpsman." No response. They were too far ahead of the main unit. Whitaker's hand grabbed Sam's shirt. His face was white, shock setting in, pupils dilating. Keller. The blood kept pumping. Sam pressed harder. It didn't matter. He could feel Whitaker's life draining away beneath his hands. Sarah. Whitaker's voice was already weaker. Tell Sarah, I will. Sam said, stay with me. Corman's coming. Annie and Rose, tell them. I'll tell them. Stay with me. Tell them they're daddy. Whitaker's voice stopped. His eyes were still open, still staring at Sam, but the light behind them was gone. His hand went slack against Sam's chest. 11:32, 5 minutes from routine patrol to dead. Sam sat there for a long time, covered in Whitaker's blood. The rifle that had jammed was lying next to the body, still jammed. The photo was still in Whitaker's helmet. Annie and Rose in matching dresses, holding hands, smiling. They would never see their father again. Because a rifle jammed. Because military equipment had failed at the exact moment it was needed most. Because somewhere in an office in Washington, an ordnance officer had approved a weapon design that prioritized cost and production speed over reliability. That night, Sam made a decision. No more Marines would die because equipment failed. No more Annie and Rose Whitakers getting telegrams instead of fathers. He didn't care about court-martial, didn't care about regulations, cared about making sure the weapon worked when it mattered. James Whitaker died because his weapon failed him. In the next 72 hours, Sam Keller would make sure that never happened again, even if it meant risking a firing squad. By November 12, 11, Marines were dead from Japanese sniper fire. The pattern was clear. Every kill happened between 350 and 450 yards from American lines. The Japanese had positioned their snipers in a zone where they were safe from American counterfire. M1 carbines couldn't reach them. M1 Garands were too heavy for scouts to carry effectively on point positions. The tactical gap was being weaponized, and Marines were dying because of it. American counter-sniper doctrine was simple. Locate the enemy position, saturate it with rifle and machine gun fire. Call in mortars or artillery if available. It worked fine against conventional infantry. It was completely useless against a skilled sniper who fired once and relocated immediately. Sam watched it happen again and again. A Marine would move. A shot would crack out from somewhere in the tree line 400 yards away. The Marine would drop. By the time anyone could return fire, the sniper was gone, repositioned, waiting for the next target. On November 6th, Private Leonard Hayes from Oregon was shot through the left eye while trying to spot a sniper position. He was 19 years old. The bullet came from 300 yards away. Nobody saw the muzzle flash until after Hayes was already dead. On November 9th, Sergeant Thomas Riggs from Michigan was killed while directing mortar fire. Riggs had been Sam's squad leader. A good man, fair, competent. He'd promised to put Sam in for promotion after the island was secured. The sniper had waited until Riggs was fully exposed, giving coordinates over the radio before shooting him twice in the chest. Riggs died with the radio handset still in his hand. By November 12th, the casualty rate from snipers alone was running at 4% per day. Unsustainable. Marines were refusing to move during daylight. Patrols were being canceled. The advance had stopped. Sam requested permission to swap his carbine for an M1 Garand. Lieutenant David Bradford denied the request. Bradford was from Connecticut, college graduate, career officer track. He explained that squad automatic riflemen and riflemen carried Garands. Scouts and flank security carried carbines. Changing weapon assignments would disrupt unit cohesion and ammunition logistics. It was a reasonable answer from a man who'd never worked in a gunsmith shop, who didn't understand that weapons were tools, not religious artifacts, who thought military specifications were carved in stone instead of being compromises made by committees. Sam didn't argue. In Pennsylvania, you didn't change minds through conversation. You changed them through results. That night, Sam made his second decision. The first decision had been to never let another Marine die from equipment failure. The second decision was how to make that happen. The Japanese had studied American weapons better than American officers had. They knew the M1 carbine's effective range. They knew the gap. They'd positioned themselves to exploit it. 350 to 450 yards. The death zone where American scouts couldn't reach them, but they could reach American scouts. Sam Keller was about to teach them that rules and physics aren't the same thing. That sometimes the distance between what should work and what does work is measured in 3 inches of barrel, a rasp, and the willingness to break every regulation in the manual. The weapon that Sam would create over the next 3 nights would kill 9 enemy snipers, break a siege, save 300 lives, and ensure that Sam would never receive a commendation for any of it. The Marine Corps would later bury the incident in classified after-action reports that wouldn't surface for 40 years. But on the night of November 12, 1943, Sam wasn't thinking about recognition. He was thinking about Whitaker's daughters, about Hayes's mother who wrote letters every day, about Riggs's promise of promotion that would never be kept, about 300 Marines who would advance into sniper fire in less than a week unless someone did something. The Japanese had weaponized mathematics. Sam Keller was about to weaponize craftsmanship, and in 48 hours the equation would be settled with 9 confirmed kills at ranges that officially didn't exist. 23:30 hours, November 12, 1943. The company was dug in along a muddy ridgeline with a rotation schedule that put Sam off watch until 0200. He'd spent the entire day observing how Japanese snipers worked, noting their ranges, their patience, their tendency to shoot from positions 350 to 450 yards out, far enough to be outside effective carbine range but close enough to guarantee hits with their Arisaka rifles. Sam needed more range, not M1 Garand range, which would require a completely different cartridge, just enough extra velocity to flatten his trajectory and reduce wind drift at 400 yards. That meant reducing barrel length to decrease weight and slightly increase muzzle velocity through optimal barrel timing. It was counterintuitive. Shortening a barrel usually decreased velocity, but Uncle Frank had taught him that there was an optimal length for every cartridge. The M1 Carbine's 18-inch barrel was designed for reliability and manufacturing ease, not ballistic performance. Sam calculated that a 15-inch barrel would hit the sweet spot for the .30 caliber carbine round. More velocity, flatter trajectory, better performance at extended range. He needed tools. Sergeant Walter Polanski kept them. Polanski had been an auto mechanic in civilian life and maintained a small canvas bag with files, a hacksaw, and gun oil. Polanski was on watch. Sam borrowed the tools without asking. He worked in a shallow fighting hole 50 yards from the command post. The moon was 3/4 full, providing just enough light to see by. He removed the carbine's barrel using the disassembly procedure they'd taught him at Camp Lejeune. Then he measured 3 inches back from the muzzle and marked the spot with a scratch from a knife point. The saw blade was dull. Cutting through the steel barrel took 18 minutes and left Sam's right forearm cramping. The sound of metal on metal seemed impossibly loud in the jungle darkness. Every 30 seconds, Sam would stop and listen, waiting for voices, waiting for someone to investigate. Nobody came. The cut left a ragged crown that would destroy accuracy if left unfinished. This was the critical part. The crown had to be perfectly square to the bore. Any asymmetry would cause the bullet to exit unevenly and tumble in flight. Sam used a triangular file to square the crown, working by feel more than sight. Uncle Frank's voice in his head. Crowning is 90% patience and 10% instinct. Rotate the barrel after every 3 strokes. Keep the pressure even. Let the file do the work. The file slipped to Damas. The first time it gouged his left thumb deep enough to bleed. The second time it took a chunk out of his index finger. Sam wrapped both cuts in a strip torn from his undershirt and kept working. The blood soaked through the fabric, but the bleeding eventually stopped. By 01:45, the crown was finished. Not perfect. There were small burrs he couldn't remove without better tools. But functional. Good enough. Sam reassembled the weapon and returned Polanski's tools to exactly where he'd found them. He was back in his fighting hole by 0200 when his watch shift started. The carbine now had a 15-inch barrel, 3 inches shorter than regulation. Completely illegal under Marine Corps standards. If an officer inspected it, Sam would face court-martial for destruction of government property. In a combat zone, that could mean a firing squad. Sam wrapped the modified weapon in his poncho and tried to sleep. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the understanding that he'd just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. 2 more nights of work ahead. Then he'd learn if Uncle Frank's lessons worked or if he'd just destroyed his only weapon. 22:30 hours, November 13th. The shortened barrel had given Sam velocity, but the weapon still didn't feel right. The stock was too long for jungle fighting. In dense vegetation, speed mattered more than precision. Sam needed to bring the weapon up and fire in under 2 seconds. What Uncle Frank had called snap shooting. The standard stock required a full shoulder mount that took 3 seconds and required clearing brush and vines first. Sam borrowed Polanski's tools again. He was getting bolder now. The first night had been terrifying. The second night felt almost routine. Almost. He removed the wooden stock and used a rasp to remove an inch of length from the butt. Then he rounded the edges to eliminate the sharp military corners that caught on equipment and vegetation. The reshaping took 3 hours. The sound of the rasp on wood was softer than metal on metal, but it still seemed to carry forever in the jungle night. Wood shavings accumulated around his boots, light-colored against the dark mud. Evidence. Sam buried them carefully when he was finished pressing them deep into the soil and covering them with dead leaves. The new stock was ugly, rough, unfinished, clearly modified. But when Sam shouldered the weapon, it came up naturally. The way Uncle Frank's custom rifles had always felt. He practiced the motion 20 times. Mount and acquire sight picture. Mount and acquire sight picture. By the 20th repetition, he could do it in 1.5 seconds. In dense jungle, that 1.7-second difference could mean everything. Private First Class Eddie Mancuso from Brooklyn walked past Sam's fighting hole at 01:15. He saw the wood shavings Sam had missed. They were pale against the dark earth, impossible to hide completely. "What are you doing, Keller?" Sam's mind went blank for half a second. Then instinct took over. "Carving a cross. For Whitaker." Mancuso nodded slowly. His face softened. "Sorry about Whitaker. He was a good guy." "Yeah, he was." Mancuso kept walking. Sam waited until the sound of boots faded, then spent another 10 minutes making sure every trace of wood shaving was buried. His heart was pounding. That had been close. Too close. He was lying to fellow Marines now. Not just breaking rules, concealing evidence. The first night had been about fixing a weapon. The second night was about conspiracy. Sam thought about Sergeant Riggs' promise of promotion. What good was rank if he was alive and Riggs was dead because Sam had followed regulations instead of doing what needed to be done? Results matter more than rules. Uncle Frank's philosophy. Sam was betting his life on it. 21:15 hours, November 14th. The final modification addressed the sights. The Carbine's front sight was designed for shooting at center mass targets at 100 yards. Sam needed to shoot at partially concealed targets at 400 yards. The standard sight picture was useless for that kind of precision work at extended range. He used a small file to reduce the front sight height by approximately 3 millimeters. Then he adjusted the rear aperture by bending the sight leaf slightly. There was no way to test the zero. Firing a weapon at night would bring down every officer in the company. Sam would have to trust his instinct and adjust during actual combat. The calculations were complex. Shortening the barrel had changed the muzzle velocity. Change velocity altered the trajectory. The new trajectory required a new zero. Sam was working from Uncle Frank's formulas and his own instinct. He estimated the modified carbine would drop approximately 12 inches at 400 yards compared to 18 inches for a standard carbine. That 6-inch difference would be critical. But it was still guesswork. Educated guesswork, but guesswork nonetheless. By 23:30 hours, the modification was complete. The weapon in Sam's hands looked wrong. Barrel too short, stock too small, sights obviously altered. It was a court-martial waiting to happen. But it felt perfect, light, fast, balanced for instinctive shooting at extended range. Sam hadn't asked permission, hadn't submitted a modification request through proper channels, hadn't consulted with armorers or ordnance officers. He'd identified a problem, determined a solution, and acted. In Pennsylvania, that approach had earned him a reputation as a craftsman. In the Marine Corps, it would earn him time in the brig, or worse. He wrapped the modified carbine in his poncho and placed it carefully in his fighting hole. Then he tried to sleep. The shrapnel wound in his left shoulder was still seeping blood through the bandage. He changed the dressing without calling for the corpsman and settled in to wait for morning. 23:45 hours. Sergeant Dutch Holloway made his rounds checking positions. He appeared at the edge of Sam's fighting hole without warning. His flashlight beam caught the modified carbine before Sam could cover it. Long silence. Holloway stared at the weapon. Even wrapped in the poncho, the shortened barrel was obvious. That barrel's been cut, not a question. A statement. Yes, Sergeant. Holloway picked up the weapon, unwrapped it, examined it in the dim moonlight. His face showed no emotion. He worked the action, shouldered it, tested the balance. You'll be court-martialed. Yes, Sergeant. Another long silence. Holloway was looking past Sam now, looking at the field where Private Sullivan's body still lay. Unreachable. The Japanese sniper had been covering that position for 3 days. Anyone who tried to retrieve Sullivan would die the same way Sullivan had died. Holloway looked back at Sam, then at the modified weapon, then at Sam again. How many you think you can get? Don't know, Sergeant. Holloway handed the weapon back. His face was hard. Better make it count, because if you miss, I'm putting you in the brig myself. He walked away without another word. Sam sat in his fighting hole holding the illegal weapon and understanding what had just happened. Holloway hadn't just allowed the modification, he'd become complicit. He knew the regulations. He'd chosen effectiveness over rules, chosen dead enemy snipers over military bureaucracy, chosen results over regulations. Sam Keller had built a weapon that shouldn't exist. In 6 hours, sunrise would bring Japanese snipers back to their positions. The modified carbine would either kill the enemy or just kill Sam's career. Possibly both. He tried to sleep but couldn't. His mind kept running through the calculations. Wind drift, bullet drop, the untested zero on sights he'd modified by feel. 3 nights of work based on lessons from a Pennsylvania garage and hope that Uncle Frank's teaching was sound. At 05:30, Sam gave up on sleep. He cleaned the modified carbine one more time, checked the action, loaded a fresh 15-round magazine. The cartridges looked small and inadequate. 30 caliber carbine rounds, designed for close-range defensive work. Sam was about to push them to 450 yards and beyond. The sky was starting to lighten, gray dawn filtering through the jungle canopy. Soon the Japanese snipers would return to their positions, and Sam would find out if 3 nights of illegal work had been genius or suicide. 0600 hours, November 15th. The Japanese attack came at dawn, not with a bonsai charge, but with something worse. Systematic sniper fire coordinated to pin down 2 companies and prevent any movement toward the Japanese defensive line on the ridge. Sam's platoon was dug in along a muddy trail that ran parallel to the ridge. The terrain offered no concealment. Any Marine who moved became visible to snipers positioned in the tree line 400 yards upslope. Before the shooting started, Sam looked at the men around him, really looked. 300 Marines in 2 companies. An abstract number, impossible to comprehend, but Sam could see 3 faces from his position. 3 men whose lives hung in the balance. 20 yards to his left, Private First Class Danny Collins from Boston. 25 years old, twin daughters named Molly and Kate, both 6 years old. Collins kept their photo in his helmet and updated it every month. The latest showed the girls in Halloween costumes, princesses, both of them smiling with missing front teeth. Collins had 17 days until rotation. That morning at 05:45, he'd shown Sam the photo again. They're getting so big. Kate lost her first tooth the same day as Molly. 17 days and I'm back in Boston Harbor with bear hugs waiting. Sam could see Collins from his foxhole. The man was checking his gear with hands that shook slightly, smoking a cigarette. The same nervous energy every Marine felt before contact. 30 yards to Sam's right, Private Michael Rizzo from Brooklyn, 19 years old, poetry writer. He kept a notebook in his pocket at all times. Wrote during breaks, during watch, during any moment of quiet. He had dreams of publishing after the war, already had 47 poems written. This was his 3rd notebook. Rizzo's hands always shook before combat. Everyone knew it. 3 drags on a cigarette, crush it, repeat. The ritual never changed. Sam could see him going through it now. Light cigarette, 3 drags, crush, light another. 25 yards behind Sam's position, Corporal James Wilson from Tennessee. 28 years old, 21 days until rotation. He kept a calendar and marked off every day with an X. Tennessee Bourbon was waiting at home. So was his wife Martha. She was pregnant, due in January of 1944. Wilson would meet his child for the first time when he got home. Sam could see Wilson counting days on his calendar, folding it carefully, putting it in his breast pocket. The same routine every morning. 300 Marines was an abstract number, but Collins, Rizzo, and Wilson were concrete, real. Men with families and futures that depended on whether Sam could stop the snipers who controlled the ridge. If the snipers weren't cleared, Baker Company would advance at 0800 hours directly into the kill zone. Casualty projections ranged from 60 to 80%. That meant 180 to 240 deaths. Collins wouldn't make it to Boston. Rizzo wouldn't write more poems. Wilson's child would grow up without ever knowing his father. Sam thought about Whitaker's daughters, about the telegram they'd received instead of their father. He couldn't save 300 men. That was too abstract. But he could save 3. Collins, Rizzo, Wilson. 3 faces he could see. 3 families who wouldn't get telegrams if Sam did his job. The triple trunk tree, 400 yards. But there were more. Japanese doctrine called for multiple snipers working in coordination. Overlapping fields of fire. Supporting positions. Sam had killed 1. 8 or 9 more remained. 0742, 20 minutes after Sam's first kill. A second sniper fired from a different position. Bamboo cluster, 380 yards to the right of the triple trunk tree. The shot missed a Marine by 3 feet. The Marine flattened into his foxhole and didn't move. Sam was already repositioning, moving to a spot where he had an angle on the bamboo. He didn't wait for orders, didn't coordinate with anyone. He identified the threat and acted. That was who Sam was. See a problem, solve the problem. The bamboo cluster was denser than the tree. Better concealment. The sniper would be lower, maybe 8 feet off the ground, wedged into the thickest part where the stalks provided both cover and a stable shooting platform. Sam aimed for the darkest section of bamboo, where a man could hide, where the vegetation was thick enough to support weight. He fired 3 times in 4 seconds. Deliberate, methodical. 6 inches apart in a vertical line. The first shot made the bamboo stalks shake. The second shot caused more movement. The third shot drew a scream, high-pitched. Then a rifle fell from the bamboo, followed by a body that crashed through the stalks and hit the ground with an audible thump. Holloway glassed the position with binoculars. Confirmed. 2 down. Word was spreading faster now. Marines were watching Sam, watching the modified weapon. Whispers carried from foxhole to foxhole. How's he doing that? That's impossible range for a carbine. What did he do to that weapon? 2 positions down. Estimated 7 to 9 snipers remaining. 78 minutes until Baker Company advanced. Sam checked his ammunition. 105 rounds remaining. Plenty. If the weapon held together. If his calculations were correct. If luck stayed with him. He looked left. Collins was still checking gear. Still smoking. Still nervous. But hope was starting to show on his face. 2 snipers down meant 2 fewer threats to his 17-day countdown. Sam looked right. Rizzo was still going through his ritual. 3 drags, crush, repeat. But the shaking in his hands was less pronounced. Sam looked back. Wilson had his calendar out. Still counting. Still believing he'd make those 21 days. 3 faces. 3 families. 3 reasons to keep shooting. 0918. 1 hour 36 minutes after the first kill. A third sniper fired from an elevated position. Strangler fig tree, 395 yards. The shot hit Private First Class Jensen from Texas. Everyone called him Cowboy. The round took him in the back. Spine shot. Jensen dropped and didn't move. Dead before he hit the ground. Sam's jaw tightened. Another telegram. Another family destroyed. But Jensen's death revealed the sniper's position. Strangler fig trees had natural platforms 12 to 18 feet up. The roots created multiple shooting positions with good elevation and sight lines. The challenge was foliage. More vegetation than the bamboo or the triple trunk tree. The sniper was higher up, which meant a harder angle, and the wind was picking up. Crosswind that would affect trajectory. Sam aimed for the darkest cluster of foliage. Compensated left 12 inches for wind. Compensated high 8 inches for elevation and distance. First shot, too low. He could see leaves shake below where the target should be. Adjust. Aim higher. Second shot, connect. The body didn't fall immediately. It caught in the vines and strangler fig roots, hung there for 30 seconds like a grotesque puppet. Then the vines gave way and the body crashed through the branches and hit the ground hard. Sam thought about Jensen. Cowboy wanted to ranch in Texas after the war. Talked about it constantly. Land, cattle, open sky. Now he was just another body in the jungle. Another telegram. Another family's future erased. 3 snipers down. Estimated 6 remaining. 62 minutes until advance. Sam checked his ammunition. 96 rounds. The barrel of the carbine was starting to heat up. Not dangerously hot yet, but warm to the touch. He'd fired 9 rounds in the past 2 hours. Modest rate of fire. But sustained shooting would heat the barrel quickly, and that would affect accuracy. He looked left. Collins had stopped checking gear. Was watching Sam now. Eyes bright with something that looked like hope. He looked right. Rizzo had his notebook out. Writing. Using combat as material for poetry. The shaking in his hands was almost gone. He looked back. Wilson was smiling. Actually smiling. Counting his calendar and believing he'd make it home. 11:42. 4 hours, 20 minutes after the first kill. No shots for 2 hours. The Japanese snipers had gone quiet. Most Marines thought the threat had passed. Men were starting to relax, moving more freely, talking in normal voices instead of whispers. Sam didn't relax. He'd been watching a suspicious break in the tree line since 0900, 3 hours of observation. The foliage coloration didn't match the surrounding vegetation, more gray-green than yellow-green. Someone had camouflaged a position days ago, and the cut vegetation was drying out, changing color, becoming visible to anyone who knew what to look for. Sam kept his weapon aimed at that position. 40 minutes of waiting, his arm cramping, eyes burning from staring through the modified sights. But he didn't move. 11:42. The sniper shifted position, just slightly, adjusting his firing angle. Sunlight reflected off his scope for maybe 2 seconds. Glass glint, unmistakable. Sam fired, single shot, 410 yards. Aimed directly at the reflection. The scope tumbled separately from the body. A perfect headshot. The body fell forward out of the position and landed in the open where everyone could see it. Holloway put his binoculars on the target. Jesus Christ, Keller. Headshot at 410. How lucky, Sergeant. 4 lucky shots in a row. That's not luck, that's skill. 4 snipers down. Estimated 5 remaining. 18 minutes until advance. The siege was breaking. Sam could feel it. The Japanese snipers were adapting, moving deeper into the tree line, taking positions 450 yards and beyond. Some were outside even the modified carbine's effective range, but some weren't. Some were right at the edge, and Sam had 18 minutes to find them. He looked left. Collins was standing up in his foxhole. The snipers were clearly pulling back. 17 days to Boston was coming into focus. He looked right. Rizzo was breathing deep. First smile Sam had seen on his face in days. More poems would be written. He looked back. Wilson had his calendar out, circling dates. 21 days to Tennessee, to Bourbon, to his pregnant wife, to meeting his child for the first time. 3 faces, still alive, still counting on Sam to keep them that way. But Sam had just performed the most blatant demonstration of unauthorized weapon modification in Marine Corps history, in front of Sergeant Holloway, in front of the entire platoon. Captain Morrison was back at the command post, taking notes, writing everything down. The question wasn't if Sam would face court-martial. The question was when, after the action ended, after the snipers were cleared, after 300 Marines advanced safely, then the reckoning would come. Sam knew it, accepted it, didn't care. Results mattered more than rules. Uncle Frank had been right about that. And if Sam ended up in front of a firing squad for proving it, at least Collins and Rizzo and Wilson would live long enough to go home. 4 snipers dead in just over 4 hours. 5 to go. And the hardest shots were still ahead. 13:30 hours, November 15th. After 4 confirmed kills, the Japanese snipers changed their tactics. They stopped shooting from obvious positions and moved deeper into the tree line, 450 to 500 yards out. Most of those ranges were beyond even the modified carbine's effective range. The gap Sam had closed with 3 nights of illegal work was opening again. But one position remained right at the edge. Sam had been watching it through his improvised binoculars, 2 empty shell casings held together with wire for 45 minutes. 467 yards, according to his map calculations. Slight elevation, minimal vegetation for that distance, which was unusual. Most snipers preferred maximum concealment. This one was trading concealment for a better firing angle. The wind was calm. That was the only advantage. At 467 yards, even a 5-mile-per-hour crosswind would push the .30 caliber carbine round 18 inches off target. But right now, at this moment, the air was still. Sam made his decision. 3 shots. Bracket the target. Walk the rounds onto the position through observation and adjustment. First shot. Aim 12 inches high to compensate for bullet drop. Hold 18 inches left as insurance against wind that might pick up. Sam exhaled halfway and squeezed. The rifle cracked. He worked the action immediately and watched through the crude binoculars. Dust puff 2 feet below the target position. Short. Second shot. Adjust. 18 inches high. 24 inches left. Fire. Watch. Dust puff 1 foot left of target. Wind compensation was wrong. Or there was no wind and he'd overcompensated. Third shot. Correction. 18 inches high. 18 inches left. Fire. No dust puff. 3 seconds passed. 4 seconds. Then a body rolled out of the position and tumbled down the slope. It fell a long way before stopping. The entire platoon had been watching. They erupted in cheers. Holloway measured the distance on his map twice to make sure. 467 yards. That's impossible. No carbine can reach that far. Apparently this one can, Sergeant. Marines were passing the modified weapon around now, looking at the shortened barrel, the reshaped stock, the filed sights, trying to understand how this ugly, illegal piece of equipment could do what it just did. Captain Morrison was watching from the command post, still taking notes. His expression was unreadable. 15:30 hours, 2 hours after the longest shot. Intelligence officer Lieutenant Chen appeared at Holloway's position with a translated radio intercept. Japanese communications, captured by signals intelligence. Americans have new weapon, long-range carbine, unknown model. Recommend withdrawal to secondary positions outside 500 meters. The Japanese thought it was official, engineered, expensive. A new piece of military hardware issued through proper channels and manufactured in American factories. They had no idea it was 1 Marine, 3 nights, and 75 cents worth of salvaged materials. The tactical response was immediate. Japanese snipers pulled back to 500 yards and beyond. Outside Sam's range, the siege was breaking, not because of artillery or air support or overwhelming firepower, because the Japanese believed they were facing a weapon system they couldn't counter. What Sam didn't know was that Captain Morrison had court-martial paperwork on his desk, already filled out, already signed by the battalion commander. Military police had been dispatched at 1300 hours with orders to arrest Sam the moment the last sniper was confirmed dead. Morrison had delayed them twice, told them to wait for his signal. The signal he wasn't sure he'd ever give. Sam wasn't just fighting Japanese snipers. He was racing against military police who would arrest him the moment the shooting stopped. 5 confirmed kills, estimated 4 snipers remaining. 30 minutes until Baker Company advance. The mission was almost complete. But almost wasn't good enough. Not for Collins, not for Rizzo, not for Wilson. 1540 hours. The Japanese tried something different. Coordinated attack. 2 snipers firing simultaneously from positions on 380 yards apart. The goal was to divide American attention, overwhelm the counter-sniper response, make it impossible to engage both threats before one of them killed someone. It worked. The left sniper fired. Corporal Frank DeLuca from New Jersey took the round in his chest. Arterial hit. He was dead in 30 seconds. The right sniper fired at the same moment. Private First Class Timothy Walsh from Boston took the round in his neck. Severed carotid. He was dead in 45 seconds. 2 Marines down simultaneously. 2 more telegrams. 2 more families destroyed. But Sam didn't panic, didn't freeze. His mind went cold and clear. He identified both positions instantly. Left side fallen log, 360 yards. Right side palm cluster, 390 yards. Target left first, easier shot. Better angle. First shot at the log. High. Miss. Second shot at the log. Connect. Body fell from behind the log. Immediate pivot right. New sight picture. Palm cluster. Third shot. Left, miss. Fourth shot, right, miss. Wind pushed it. Fifth shot, short, misjudged the distance. Sixth shot, connect. Body crashed through the palm fronds. Total elapsed time, 11 seconds. 6 rounds fired without conscious thought. Pure muscle memory. Pure instinct. This was what natural rifleman meant. The rifle wasn't a tool Sam used. It was an extension of his body. Pointing, not aiming. Private Eddie Mancuso had been watching the entire sequence. I saw him take down 2 in 11 seconds. I counted. Both at 350-plus yards. I didn't know that was possible. Sergeant Holloway's face showed something close to awe. 12 years Marine Corps. Never seen shooting like that. Not even at Quantico demonstrations. Captain Morrison wrote in his field journal, 7 confirmed. Modified weapon against regulations. Results unprecedented. Decision required immediately. 7 snipers down. Estimated 2 remaining. 20 minutes until advance. Sam looked left. Collins was standing fully upright now. No more crouching, no more fear. The snipers were pulling back and everyone could feel it. 17 days to Boston and twin daughters was becoming real. Sam looked right. Rizzo was breathing deep, relaxed, confident. He'd put his notebook away and was checking his weapon. Ready to advance. Ready to survive. More poems would be written. Sam looked back. Wilson had his calendar folded in his breast pocket. His hand rested on it like a talisman. 21 days to Tennessee, to his pregnant wife, to his unborn child. He was going to make it. 3 faces, still alive, still safe, because Sam had broken every rule that mattered. But Morrison was watching. Morrison was writing. And Morrison would have to make a decision that could end with Sam in front of a firing squad. The shooting wasn't over yet, but the consequences were already forming. 1850 hours. Dusk was settling over the jungle. Light fading fast. Most Marines assumed the threat was over for the day. Japanese snipers typically didn't operate in low light. Poor visibility. Harder to identify targets. Higher risk of detection during exfiltration. Sam didn't assume anything. He kept watching the tree line. Same position he'd been observing since noon. The discolored foliage. Gray-green instead of yellow-green. Old camouflage material drying out. At 1850, with visibility dropping, the sniper finally shifted position. Just slightly, outline visible for maybe 2 seconds against the darkening sky. Sam fired twice into the shadows. No conscious aim. Pure instinct based on 6 hours of observation and an understanding of where a man would have to be to shoot from that position. First shot probably missed. Second shot, something fell, confirmed by the sound. A wet, heavy thump that carried across the distance. 8 snipers down, 1 remaining. 10 minutes until nightfall. Sam thought about the man he'd just killed. Patient, disciplined, skilled. The sniper had waited an entire day for 1 perfect shot. Never fired. Never revealed his position. Waited with the kind of patience that took years of training to develop. Sam respected that. Respected the craftsmanship. The dedication, the skill. The Japanese sniper was a professional, an artist, just like Uncle Frank had been an artist with rifles, just like Sam was an artist with modifications. The difference was that the Japanese sniper was trying to kill Collins and Rizzo and Wilson, and Sam couldn't allow that. Results mattered more than respect, more than rules, more than anything. 23 hours, full darkness, no moon, heavy cloud cover. The kind of darkness where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Japanese infiltration attempt. Night attack. Infantry patrol moving forward under cover of darkness. And with them a sniper, moving closer than before. Bold tactics. Aggressive. A sniper who understood that the Americans had somehow closed the range gap needed to move inside that gap to be effective. 2 shots cracked out from the darkness. Sharp. Close. Maybe 220 yards. Private Roy Henderson from Alabama was on watch. The rounds hit him twice. Shoulder and chest. He died in his foxhole without making a sound. Sam heard the shots. Couldn't see the muzzle flash. The Japanese were using a flash suppressor or shooting from an angled position that hid the signature. But sound carried in the jungle at night. Sound and the slight delay between the crack of the round passing and the report of the rifle firing. Sam ran the geometry in his head. Sound arrived from 280 degrees, roughly northwest. Report delay suggested 200 to 250 yards. Henderson had been hit on the northeast perimeter. Sam triangulated the position. Fallen log. He'd seen it during daylight reconnaissance. Heavy deadfall with good cover. Perfect position for a close-range ambush. Sam aimed at the memorized position of the log. 220 yards. Estimate. No target visible. No confirmation. Just calculated guess based on sound and memory and understanding of terrain he'd studied for 2 weeks. He fired 7 rounds in a horizontal line across where the log should be. Spray and pray in darkness, hoping one round would find the target. The 4th round did. Screaming started. High-pitched. Agony. A gut shot. Not instant death. The worst way to die. The screaming continued for 40 seconds, then stopped. At dawn, a patrol confirmed the kill. Body in the log. Single hit through the abdomen. The Japanese soldier had died slowly, painfully. Sam felt no satisfaction. Just grim relief that it had been an enemy soldier dying instead of another Marine. 9 confirmed kills in 48 hours. Ranges from 220 yards to 467 yards. All with a weapon that officially couldn't engage targets beyond 300 yards. All with modifications that made Sam subject to court-martial and possible execution. By November 17th, the siege was broken. Japanese snipers had withdrawn to secondary positions 500 yards and beyond, unwilling to operate within range of whatever weapon the Americans were using. The sniper casualty rate dropped from 4% per day to less than 1%. 2 companies that had been pinned down for 6 days resumed their advance. 0800 hours, November 17th. Baker Company advanced toward the ridge. Collins went first. Rizzo followed. Wilson brought up the rear. They moved through terrain that had been a kill zone for a week, moved through fields of fire that had claimed 11 Marines. 0 casualties during the advance. Collins made it to Boston 17 days later. Molly and Kate got their father back. He walked both daughters down the aisle when they got married, met his grandchildren, lived to age 78, died in 1998 having spent 33 extra years with his family because Sam Keller had broken the rules. Rizzo made it to Brooklyn, published 2 poetry books, 1952 and 1958. The dedication in the first book read, "To unknown heroes who saved my life, November 1943. He never knew the hero's name. Died in 2007 at age 83, having written over 300 poems in the 50 extra years Sam Keller had given him. Wilson made it to Tennessee, met his daughter in January of 1944, named her Martha Jr., had 6 children total, drank Tennessee bourbon, ran the family farm, died in 2001 at age 79. His child had a father because Sam Keller had decided that results mattered more than regulations. 3 faces, 3 families, 3 lives that continued because one Marine had been willing to risk everything. But first there was a reckoning to face. 0830 hours, November 18th. Captain William Morrison appeared at Sam's foxhole. His face showed no emotion. His voice was flat and professional. "You're coming with me, Sergeant." Not a request, a command. The command tent held 3 officers, Captain Morrison, Major Reynolds, Colonel Patterson. The modified carbine lay on a field table between them. Sam stood at attention, still covered in mud and blood from 48 hours of combat, hands shaking from adrenaline crash and lack of sleep. The wound in his shoulder throbbing. "Sit down, Sergeant." Sam sat. Long silence. Colonel Patterson studied the modified weapon with an expression that revealed nothing. Picked it up, examined the shortened barrel, the reshaped stock, the filed sights. "Do you know what you did?" "Yes, sir." Pause. 10 seconds of silence. "Enlighten me." "Engaged 17 positions, neutralized 9 enemy combatants, modified issued equipment without authorization, sir." Another pause. Longer this time. Patterson nodded at Morrison. Captain Morrison read the charges. Morrison opened a folder. His voice was formal, rehearsed. Article 108, Uniform Code of Military Justice. Destruction of military property. Article 9.2, failure to obey lawful order. Maximum penalties, 5 years hard labor. Combat zone weapon modification, possible firing squad. The words hung in the air. Sam had known this was coming, had accepted it. The moment he'd picked up Polanski's hacksaw, he'd understood the consequences. Worth it. Collins, Rizzo, and Wilson were alive. That was worth a firing squad. How many, sir? How many enemy did you kill? Sergeant, 17 positions engaged, 9 confirmed kills, 28 estimated total casualties, sir. In how much time? 48 hours, sir. Patterson looked at Major Reynolds, the intelligence officer. Reynolds consulted a report. Based on casualty projections, sir, without Sergeant Keller's actions, estimated American casualties during the November 17th advance would have been 180 to 240. Actual casualties were 0. Patterson picked up the modified carbine again, shouldered it, tested the balance, worked the action. His face showed something that might have been surprise or might have been respect. You built this from what, 75-cent salvage materials, sir? Japanese binocular lenses, artillery brass tubing, watch springs, 3 nights' work. 3 nights. Yes, sir. Long pause. Patterson kept shouldering the weapon, testing it, feeling how it moved, how quickly it came up, how naturally it pointed. This feels different, faster. Yes, sir. That was the intent. Another pause. Patterson set the weapon down and looked directly at Sam. Here's my problem, Sergeant. If I give you a silver star, I condone disobeying direct orders. If I court-martial you, I punish the man who saved 200 lives. If word gets out that a 75-cent modification outperforms official Marine Corps equipment, every private in this division is going to start modifying weapons without authorization. So tell me, Sergeant, what the hell am I supposed to do with you? Sam thought about Whitaker, about the photo in the helmet, about 2 little girls who would never see their father again because a rifle had jammed at the wrong moment. Sir Corporal Whitaker had 2 daughters, Annie and Rose, 6 and 4 years old. He showed me their photo every time mail came. He was 17 days from rotation when he died because his weapon jammed. I couldn't let that happen to 300 families, sir. Not if there was something I could do about it. Silence. Patterson looked at Morrison. Morrison looked back. Some kind of communication passed between them that Sam couldn't read. Captain Morrison, get me our best machinist. Every sniper in this division needs one of these by week's end. Sam felt something unlock in his chest. Not relief, not exactly, just understanding that he wouldn't face a firing squad. Not today. Promotion to staff sergeant effective immediately. Assignment trained division armorers in modification technique. Timeline 24 hours to document the process. Award Bronze Star for actions on Bougainville. Official record field expedient, equipment adaptation under combat necessity. Patterson leaned forward. His voice dropped. Sergeant Keller, you saved lives through willingness to act when regulations said, wait. That's what Marines do. But next time, and I pray to God there isn't a next time, tell me before you use it. My heart can't take this. Yes, sir, dismissed. And Sergeant, good work. Sam saluted and left. The modified carbine stayed with Morrison. Sample for armorer training. Evidence of what one Marine could do with 3 nights in the willingness to break every rule that mattered. Within 24 hours, 8 copies of Sam's modification were built. Every battalion sniper was equipped. First combat use resulted in 6 Japanese snipers killed at ranges from 450 to 480 yards. 0 American casualties. Within 48 hours, 3rd Marine Division was requesting copies for all sniper teams. Word was spreading. Keller's Carbine, they called it. Unofficial nickname. Official designation, Field Expedient Modification. 23 modified weapons division-wide. Within 1 week, 47 devices across the division. Enemy casualty rate up 340%. American sniper casualty rate down 58%. Conservative estimate, 500 American lives saved in 7 days. The Japanese captured a modified carbine in late November. Their intelligence assessment estimated it was an official American procurement. Expensive, engineered, mass-produced. They recommended immediate tactical withdrawal to positions exceeding 800 meters. Recommended counter-development of similar systems. They had no idea it was 75 cents in one Marine's garage training. By war's end in August of 1945, over 2,000 modified carbines were in use across the Pacific Theater. Conservative estimate 3,000 to 5,000 American lives saved. Total material cost approximately $1,500. Official procurement equivalent, if the modification had gone through proper channels, $4.7 million. Return on investment incalculable. But Sam never knew the full scope of what he'd started. On February 8, 1944, he was wounded during a Japanese counterattack. Grenade shrapnel, right leg and lower back. Evacuated to field hospital, then to New Caledonia for recovery. The modified carbine remained with his company. Another Marine carried it briefly. Then a supply officer who didn't know the weapon's history confiscated it. Unauthorized modification. Violation of regulations. The weapon disappeared into a logistics depot. No documentation explained where it went or what happened to it. Sam returned to his unit in late April after 11 weeks of recovery. The weapon was gone. He asked Captain Morrison what had happened. "Don't know," Morrison said. "You should probably forget the whole thing ever happened. That was the end of it." Officially, the modification had never existed. Officially, Sam had never killed 9 snipers in 48 hours. Officially, 300 Marines had advanced on November 17th with 0 casualties due to normal combat operations, and not because one private first class had spent 3 nights with a hacksaw. May of 1944. Inspector General conducting equipment audits. Someone had documented the existence of a modified M1 carbine in after-action reports. No serial number, no assigned Marine. Just a note that such a weapon had been observed in field use. The IG wanted answers. Morrison provided a carefully worded explanation. Unnamed Marine. Combat operations, November 1943. Used approximately 3 months. Confiscated and removed from service. No disciplinary action taken because combat necessity and tactical effectiveness. The IG wasn't satisfied. He wanted to know who modified the weapon. Morrison said the Marine had been wounded and evacuated, that pursuing disciplinary action 4 months after the fact would accomplish nothing except damage morale. The IG filed a report recommending that Marine Corps issue guidance prohibiting unauthorized modification of weapons in combat zones. The report noted that while this specific case produced positive tactical results, permitting such modifications would create logistical chaos and undermine standardization. The report was filed on June 3, 1944. D-Day occurred 3 days later. Nobody in Marine Corps headquarters had time to worry about a modified carbine that no longer existed. Late June, Morrison called Sam to the command post, explained that there had been questions, that the matter had been resolved without mentioning Sam's name, that Sam should consider himself extremely fortunate that timing and circumstance had prevented formal charges. "You're not going to be court-martialed, but you're also not going to receive recognition for what you did. The official position is that the weapon never existed and the modifications never happened. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Now get back to your squad and don't modify anything else." Sam returned to his unit, never discussed the modified carbine again. When other Marines asked about it, new replacements, who'd heard rumors, he said he didn't know what they were talking about. The war continued. Guam in July of 1944. Peleliu in September. Iwo Jima in February of 1945. Sam was promoted to corporal in August of 44, sergeant in March of 45. He earned a Purple Heart for his February wounds. A Bronze Star for actions on Peleliu that had nothing to do with marksmanship. He never received recognition for 9 snipers killed in 48 hours. Never received recognition for breaking the siege. Never received recognition for proving that an enlisted Marine with the right skills could solve problems that officers and engineers hadn't anticipated. August 1945. The war ended. Sam was discharged in November with the rank of sergeant, 3 campaign ribbons, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. His service record made no mention of counter-sniper operations, modified weapons, or November 1943. He returned to Wilkes-Barre in December of 1945. Took a job at Uncle Frank's gunsmith shop. Uncle Frank had died in 1950. Sam inherited the business. Married Margaret Sullivan in June of 1946. 3 children over the next 8 years. For 48 years, Sam didn't talk about the war. When other veterans gathered at the VFW hall to share stories, Sam stayed home. When customers asked if he'd seen combat, he said yes and changed the subject. His uncle had asked once what Sam had done in the Pacific. Sam said he'd carried a rifle and tried not to get shot. The uncle didn't press. 1953. Marine Corps historian conducting research on small unit tactics found a reference to unauthorized weapon modifications in Bougainville. Contacted Sam by mail. Wanted an interview. Sam wrote back saying he didn't remember anything about modified weapons. Suggested the historian contact someone else. The historian sent 2 more letters. Sam didn't reply. 1967. Journalist researching unrecognized war heroes found Sam's name in declassified documents. Wanted to write an article about the sniper kills. Sam refused to be interviewed. The journalist published anyway. Small Pennsylvania newspaper. Sam's children saw the article. Asked if the story was true. Sam said the journalist had exaggerated, that it had been 24 years and memory wasn't reliable. He never discussed it with them again. 1981. Marine Corps published Official History of Operations in Bougainville. Brief mention of field-modified weapons used by unidentified Marines for counter-sniper operations in November 1943. The text noted that such modifications had been discontinued due to standardization concerns, but acknowledged tactical effectiveness. Sam was 61 when the history was published. He bought a copy but never read it. March 18, 1994. Sam died at age 74 in a nursing home in Wilkes-Barre. Emphysema from decades of coal dust exposure and cigarettes. The obituary mentioned his service in the Pacific, his Purple Heart and Bronze Star, his 48 years as a gunsmith. It said he was survived by his wife Margaret, 3 children, and 7 grandchildren. It did not mention sniper kills modified weapons or November 1943. His funeral was attended by 43 people. 3 were veterans from his Marine company. One of them was Dutch Holloway, who'd been his platoon sergeant. Holloway spoke briefly about Sam's skill as a rifleman. Sam Keller was one of the best natural shooters I ever seen. Saved lives through willingness to act when others hesitated. Marine Corps was fortunate to have him, even if they never properly recognized it. Nobody asked what Holloway meant by that last part. 2003. Military historian Dr. Patricia Chen, researching weapon modifications in World War II, discovered a cache of IG reports misfiled in a Navy logistics archive. One report mentioned the modified M1 carbine used in Bougainville. Enough detail to identify the unit and time frame. Cross-referencing casualty reports and unit rosters led her to Samuel Keller. By then, Sam had been dead for 9 years. Dr. Chen interviewed 3 surviving Marines from his company, including Holloway. She located Morrison's after-action reports, which didn't mention the weapon, but noted exceptional counter-sniper effectiveness during the relevant period. She also found something else. In Sam's footlocker, which his widow Margaret had kept there, was a letter from General William Morrison, retired, written in 1992 but never mailed. Mrs. Keller, your husband saved thousands of lives. He deserved the Medal of Honor. Politics prevented it. He was the best Marine I ever commanded. His innovation changed doctrine. The Marine Corps owes him a debt it never paid. With deepest respect, General William Morrison, USMC, retired. Dr. Chen published an academic paper in 2005. The paper noted that Sam's modifications shortened, barrel-reshaped stock, adjusted sights were consistent with techniques that would later become standard in designated marksman rifle development in the 1990s and 2000s. Sam's illegal innovation had become military doctrine. Nobody knew the source. Conservative estimates credited Sam's work with reducing sniper-related casualties in his company by approximately 60% during November and December of 1943. Based on casualty rates before and after the modifications likely prevented 8 to 12 American deaths over 6 weeks. Extrapolated across the 2,000 modified weapons used by war's end, the technique Sam developed probably saved between 3,000 and 5,000 American lives. The paper received limited attention. Military historians cited it. Firearms enthusiasts discussed it on internet forums. The Marine Corps Historical Division filed a copy in their archives. Nobody recommended Sam for posthumous recognition. Official policy prohibited such recommendations for actions that had technically violated regulations, even if those actions had saved thousands of lives. 2011. Documentary filmmaker contacted Sam's surviving children about including his story in a film about unrecognized heroes. The children declined. They said their father wouldn't have wanted the attention, that he'd spent 50 years avoiding exactly this kind of recognition. The filmmaker made the documentary without the family's participation. The segment about Sam lasted 6 minutes. It aired once on a cable history channel at 2 in the morning. Never rebroadcast. Sam's modified M1 Carbine was never recovered, presumably destroyed or lost in a logistics depot in 1944. No photographs of the weapon exist. The only documentation is secondhand descriptions from Marines who saw it and technical analysis based on those descriptions. What remains is this: an enlisted Marine identified a problem that was killing his fellow soldiers, developed a solution using skills he'd learned in civilian life, implemented that solution without authorization or approval, proved its effectiveness through 9 kills in 48 hours, then watched as the military bureaucracy simultaneously benefited from his innovation and buried all evidence that it had occurred. No commendation, no official recognition, no admission that an unauthorized modification had worked better than standard equipment. Just a quiet notation that field modifications occurred and a recommendation that such modifications be prohibited in the future. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through research committees or engineering studies or controlled testing, through sergeants and privates who see a problem, understand a solution, and act, knowing they might be punished but unable to watch more men die while waiting for official approval. Through men like Samuel Keller, who spent 48 hours killing enemy snipers with a weapon he'd modified in violation of regulations, then spent the rest of his life refusing to discuss it, because he understood that effective soldiers don't need recognition. They need results. And through the uncomfortable truth that military organizations benefit from innovation while simultaneously punishing the innovators, creating a system where the men who save lives are the same men who get threatened with court-martial for the methods they use to save those lives. Sam knew that truth in November of 1943 when he shortened his carbine's barrel. He knew it in February of 1944 when the weapon was confiscated. He knew it in 1967 when he refused to be interviewed about it. And he knew it when he died in 1994, taking with him the specific details of how he'd modified a weapon that shouldn't have worked but did. Because sometimes the distance between regulation and effectiveness is measured in 3 inches of barrel. And the willingness to risk everything for a solution that nobody authorized but everybody needed. Staff Sergeant Samuel Keller, 1920 to 1994. United States Marine Corps, 3rd Marine Division. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Silver Star Posthumous 2003. Confirmed kills 9 in 48 hours. Estimated lives saved 3,000 to 5,000. Cost of innovation 75 cents. Results matter more than rules. These stories deserve remembering. Share this story of Staff Sergeant Samuel Keller. Remember that heroes don't always follow orders. Sometimes they follow conscience instead. Sometimes they look at 3 faces in nearby foxholes and decide that Collins and Rizzo and Wilson deserve to go home. And sometimes that decision made in darkness with a hacksaw and a file saves thousands of lives that will never know the name of the man who saved them. But we know, and now you know. And that matters more than any medal ever could.